Hi, I'm Jason Ross, filling in for Harley Schlanger for the LaRouche Organization update today on Friday, February 3rd, 2023. The main point I want to leave you with today is to encourage you to join an international conspiracy, one carried out in the open. This is a conspiracy against war, against the financial, political situation that is driving us here, driving us towards an otherwise incomprehensible risk of nuclear Armageddon. I'm encouraging you to join a conspiracy for a kind of peace that is inclusive in character, that sets a new course for humanity as a whole. Some of the leading conspirators will be speaking at and participating in a conference tomorrow hosted by the Schiller Institute called The Age of Reason or the Annihilation of Humanity. Examples of these other conspirators. President Lula da Silva of Brazil took the occasion of the visit of the pathetic German Chancellor Scholz, who came to Brazil to beg for weapons for Ukraine, to say not only is Brazil not going to be sending any weapons to Ukraine, but calling for the formation of a new international group. He talked about the creation of the G20 in light of the 2008 financial crisis as a new grouping of nations to discuss and figure out what to do. He said something like that is needed today in order to end the ongoing war, bloodshed, and destruction of the global economy that is coming with the Russia, Ukraine, NATO, US, UK conflict. President Lula da Silva mentioned China, India, Indonesia as examples of nations that could, working with Brazil, together represent a significant and powerful force for negotiations with the pull to make demands on behalf of the world as a whole. This is a useful complement to the Pope's offer for the Vatican as a place for peace negotiations, for our endorsement of that proposal. This is another wonderful proposal. And it also echoes points made by Helga Zepp-LaRouche in an address she made for a non-aligned movement seminar or conference last year, where she said that the global south has to speak up to make a demand for a new world financial and security architecture. Speaking on behalf of the global south, on behalf of the non-aligned movement itself, which encompasses more than half of the people on this planet, this is a position from which to say, hey, this conflict, supposedly over who's going to administer regions on the border area between Russia and Ukraine, and which is threatening the entire world with nuclear Armageddon and economic devastation, these countries can say, this is a terrible direction for the world. We need development. We need growth. This is not the way forward. And that's a very credible demand to make from such a group, as mentioned by President Lula. So the 16-nation Southern African development community also spoke out. They spoke out to denounce the U.S. bill called the Countering Malign Russian Activities in Africa Act, which was passed by the House last year, in which South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor said that it should be torn up and not proceed in any form or state. The U.S. cannot tell African nations, no one can tell nations around the world what they have to do, what side they have to come in on this. They're not going to take it. That's the message from the Southern African development community, re-echoing the draft denunciation of this bill by the African Union itself. The SADC went on to reaffirm its position of non-alignment towards conflicts outside the African continent. They said they would not take sides in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. This is 16 nations in the southern part of Africa, making the point, standing up and stating their non-aligned position. Most of the world is, counting in terms of population, does not want this conflict to occur. Nearly 3 million protesters have taken to the streets in France over this week to protest a change in the pension system, but also the injustice overall of France's historical trajectory more broadly. As explained by a publication of the CGT trade union, the escalation we are witnessing with the delivery of these tanks is a threat to peace in Europe and brings us dangerously close to a state of open war between Russia and NATO. The French people were not consulted on the arms deliveries. Not €1, not one soldier, not one single weapon, they say. Let's get out of NATO. Now that brings us to Charles de Gaulle, the assassination attempts against Charles de Gaulle, and the International Assassination Bureau. De Gaulle had pulled France out of the unified NATO command, stressing its sovereignty and his desire to be able to actually, make a decision about what the French military would do. There were assassination attempts on de Gaulle, and he was eventually kicked out of political life. There were successful assassinations of JFK, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Patrice Lumumba, Harryhausen, and many other people that you may not have heard of, all over the period from the 60s and forward. And this is going to be the subject of an upcoming TLO pamphlet and internet report that I'm very happy to be looking forward to coming out soon, to break apart the fear that has been created through this assassination bureau, where people get the sense, if you stand up, something bad will happen to you. What did Senator Schumer tell Rachel Maddow? He said, Trump's an idiot. They got 6 ways from Sunday, the intelligence community does. They got 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. He is dumb to take on the intelligence community. Who runs the country? Who runs the country? Who should run the country? The president, the Congress, or the CIA? Speaking of the CIA and who really runs the country, or who is exerting that power at present, we can think about the fact that the EU Commission, EU Commission members just went to Kiev. I think they're still there, talking about another $500 million in aid, as they call it. Today, the U.S. is expected to announce $2 billion in aid, if weapons are considered aid. That's a bizarre way to think about it. But the goal with all of this, it's not to liberate Ukraine. It is, as Russian ambassador to the U.S. Anatoly Antonov explained, the goal is, quote, the strategic defeat of Russia. That's what he says the goal is, to cut Russia's name from the political map of the world. And he's right. That is what is explicitly talked about among think tank circles, the Pentagon, and so forth, to just crush Russia. Similar with China. More on that in a moment. So what else is going on? In NATO, in Norway, NATO member Norway, they have forbidden the inspection and repairs on the Nord Stream pipeline, so that can't go forward. Meanwhile, Turkey is blocking Sweden's membership. And U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen said, therefore, we should sanction Turkey. The world's going mad. The presidents of Bulgaria and Hungary have both stated their opposition to weapons going to Ukraine. So let me conclude before motivating the conference again with some words from Vladimir Putin. He made a major speech yesterday celebrating the 80-year anniversary of the victory against the Nazis at Stalingrad, a battle that was pivotal in changing the course of what we call World War II, what is called by Russia the Great Patriotic War. Here's Putin. Now we are seeing that, unfortunately, the ideology of Nazism, this time in its modern guise, is again creating direct threats to our national security, and we are, time and again, forced to resist the aggression of the collective West. And World War II wasn't the only time that Russia had to face aggression from the West. However incredible it is a fact, said Putin. We are again being threatened with German Leopard tanks with crosses emblazoned on their sides. There is a plan to fight Russia on Ukrainian land using Hitler's successors, the Banderites. He also warned that those seeking to defeat Russia on the battlefield apparently do not realize that a modern war with Russia would be entirely different for them. We're not sending our tanks to the borders. Yet we have something to respond with, and it would not be limited to armor use only. Everyone must realize that. What's he implying? Think about that risk. What will you do to prevent nuclear extinction of the human race? So with that, let me encourage you to join the Schiller Institute Conference tomorrow, Saturday, February 4th. It starts at 10 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. And as always, help us get views. Please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell to turn on notifications. The LaRouche organization relies on support from our viewers like you. If you have the means to become a sustaining member of the LaRouche organization, please do so. See you tomorrow at the conference.